Et tout au long de cet après-midi, les rendez-vous de Sirha TV avec les sujets qui s'enchaînent et qui ne se ressemblent pas, avec la société Silder. Silder qui améliore la qualité de vie des consommateurs, notamment par la protection des aliments, mais également la protection des personnes, notamment par la proposition de meilleures solutions pour l'hygiène des personnes et des mobiliers. Nous allons dans quelques instants parler du gaspillage, comment éviter le gaspillage grâce à de meilleures solutions d'emballage et d'hygiène. Pour ce faire, je vais vous présenter Catherine François dans quelques minutes, mais auparavant Jonathan Dunford qui est juste sur ma gauche, la société Diversey, également Ed Roberts, mais également Catherine François. Et le débat sera animé par Alice Blondel, responsable communication du Sirha. Alice, c'est à vous.
Merci beaucoup Eric. La suite de cette présentation va se faire en anglais. We are indeed in an international conference today, and so all the beginning of this discussion will take place in English, except at the end, where I will have the pleasure to welcome Chef Jordan Vignal. Donc j'accueillerai sur la fin de cette présentation Jordan Vignal, qui est chef de partie dans un restaurant de Haute-Savoie, et un candidat de Top Chef de l'année 2014 dont il a eu la fierté d'être le plus jeune concurrent et le plus jeune candidat. Donc retour à l'anglais, we're back to English now to talk about food waste management and food hygiene issues. Welcome aboard this Sirha TV set. So welcoming Jonathan Dunford, you are Vice President for Food Care Europe within Silder. Welcoming Ed Roberts, you are in charge of Sustainable Development, Sustainability Director, and Catherine François, Global Director for Diversity Consulting. Thank you very much for being here, because we are going to talk with you on this very big event and professional show for the food service operators. We're going to talk about the growing concern for food waste and food access issues. As you are experts on these matters, you're going to be giving us your advices, your vision as one of the major players in the food industry. Turning to Jonathan, you'll be first. Tell us, why is food waste emerging as a critical concern today, if not before, for the hospitality and food service industry?
So first of all, I would say that food waste is critical not just for food service, but for the globe, for the world. In Sealed Air, we break food security into three components. We have food access, food waste, and food safety. And each of these components are interlinked. To focus on food access, that's all about how we meet the demand of the population. And the population's growing, the demand is growing. So we have a situation where the demand will increase by 50% in the next 15 years. And this is driven by the population growth from 7 to 9 billion by 2050. And also it's driven by increasing affluence. That means people have more money. There's a bigger middle class. So we end up with 3 billion more people in the middle class by 2050. And this leads to increased consumption of protein, increased consumption of food. But that's just where we are in the future. Today we have an issue in terms of supplies. So if you look at today's population, we have 1 in 8 people who are undernourished. That's almost 1 billion people across the globe. We have 5.6 million children dying every year. That's 1 every 10 seconds. We have 50,000 people who will die today of starvation. So we're at a crossroads. We need to be more sustainable. We need to act quickly. We need to act now.
Indeed, as you say, there's a bigger need for food because some people who have access to it want more of it, and then we have so many people who do not have access to it, even for the basic needs. So these are indeed extremely strong challenges. And I heard you explain to me that some parameters actually increase even more those challenges. Ed, can you elaborate more on those world trends that have an impact on food and food waste?
Sure. If I could pick up on a couple of points that Jonathan made. There are three really global trends that are key here and actually maybe contradict or influence each other. The first is population growth. Jonathan touched on it, about 9 billion people in 2050. Those people need feeding, and he picked up on that, and the UN FAO suggests that we need to produce 1.2 billion extra tons of food to feed those people. Now then, let's think about that. We've also got climate change, which lots of people are aware of. Climate change is having the reverse effect. The World Wildlife Fund suggests that crop yields and production of food will decrease by around 20% over the coming years because of climate change. And then the third issue that Jonathan mentioned was this emerging middle class who are changing their diets to a higher meat protein. Now, typically, if we look at our carbon footprint, I'm sorry, as a sustainability guy, the carbon footprint of a meat eater is roughly twice that of a vegetarian. So, eating more meat protein is adding to the climate change issue, which is decreasing the number of crops that we need to grow. So we also need to look at where, excuse me, food waste is critical in helping us fulfill that gap or meet those needs. And when we look at where food waste occurs, it varies from country to country, region to region. So if we look at the EU, for example, on the whole, around about 40% of food waste occurs in the manufacturing. So the farming, harvesting and processing.
So it's the beginning of the chain.
At the beginning of the chain.
Right.
About 40% occurs in the home. So we are wasteful as individuals.
I'm not using all the food I've bought, I'm just throwing part of it away.
You're for a number of reasons that we may come on to later, for a number of reasons you're throwing a lot of the food away. And then about 20% happens in the retail area or in Sirha within food service.
And what about the plates? You told me a lot of food service, a lot of food waste happens in the plates.
Yeah, there are a number of areas where this is happening, but if I can just pick up where we need to try and address this, because it varies from country to country. So although on average it's 20%, the issue here in France is in the home.
Is in the home.
About 70% of food waste is in the home. In Poland, about 75% is in the manufacturing, and in Spain, it's 45% is in food service retail. So the issue varies.
And what about resource scarcity? You mentioned that the crops are going to be less productive in the future years. Are there other issues related to actually agriculture, in fact?
Exactly. I mean, we've all heard of food miles and the cost of shipping. Do we grow tomatoes in warm climates like Spain and Italy and ship them north? Or do we grow them in UK and Scandinavia where we've got energy demands?
Okay. So these are indeed quite heavy challenges, actually, that you're telling us about. A growing population, hungry population, and then losses everywhere, which we need to decrease as much as we can in order to cope with these paradoxes of more demand and less productivity and less production. Then I'm going to turn to Catherine on my left-hand side. Catherine, can you explain then why good food safety management can be key drivers to reduce that food waste? And where do you see those key challenges for the food service sector? Because we need to talk to our customers and visitors here today.
Sure. So thank you, first of all, for the introduction. And if I come back a little bit to what Jonathan and Ed were saying, obviously there are going to be a lot of issues that are going to be affecting the food supply, food access, that have a direct impact on food waste. And if we think about the growing population and having the need to really deliver a lot more food effectively to the population, obviously the question arises, how are we going to be able to do that effectively and safely? And
that's my question to you. Can you help us do that?
So when you look at what's happening out there in the world today, 2.2 million people are suffering from foodborne illness every year,
So
which
they
is an
get
awful
sick
lot
because
of
of their
people getting
food.
sick because of contaminated food and food spoilage. And food spoilage automatically is linked then to food waste. So how does food spoilage occur? It's happening through chemical, through biological or physical contaminants. And essentially, there are two key drivers in that particular area. So one, specifically related to temperature control, so food which is either being poorly shipped through the supply chain and the cold chain and kept at wrong temperatures, which has a direct impact on the
So
safety of the product.
It's not cold enough, not
Exactly.
properly stored, so it gets rusty.
So microorganisms can duplicate and cause lots of issues if the food is consumed. And then food storage is the second key area that we need to focus on. And temperature control and food storage are critical parts of an effective food safety management system. And so for any organization that really wants to be able to deliver food safely to their customer, they have to ensure that they have a very robust system in place. So how does that affect the food service industry? Well, obviously, portion sizes are impacted, and how do you actually then create the right portion size safely to deliver to the end consumer? If you take food service as an example, only 92% of food which is served in a self-service restaurant is consumed. 8% is actually wasted. So portion sizes are incorrect.
Give me
huh?
just the amount I need.
Exactly.
And then I won't spoil and I won't waste.
Exactly. Attitudes to food waste need to be completely modified. The whole concept of doggy bags and taking food home isn't really very well accepted, and France is probably a key example
Not
of
exactly
that.
political.
Not very politically
idea.
correct. Stock management, inventory control, logistics, how can all of that be adapted and improved through better technology to then order exactly the right quantity of food that's required, that's transported and shipped with the right conditions, the right packaging, the right hygienic conditions in place to be able to deliver food safely. And obviously awareness on food safety and food waste is critical.
If I don't care,
from
I
the
don't do
consumer
anything.
all the way back through the supply chain. Exactly. So we really, as an industry, have to work together to be able to help to improve that awareness and knowledge to then look at how we can manage food safely, effectively, and reduce food waste.
So these are the points you address from an industry perspective, and for sure there's a big need to work on that together. I guess it's important for you then as an industry to understand better the expectations of your customers, being the food service operators or the final consumer. Maybe Ed, can you share insight on how you try and understand better what's happening in your different markets?
Although Sealed Air is a business-to-business organisation, I think one of the values that we bring to our customers is giving them insight into what their customers are thinking.
So the final customer.
Exactly. So you and I, as consumers, whether that's in a restaurant or visiting a supermarket, last year we undertook some research with Harris Poll, and we interviewed over 1,000 shoppers in the US. And we asked them to rank their environmental concerns. And that threw up some very surprising information. Their number one concern, and we've also seen this in Europe, is food safety. That is the number one concern of you or I as diners or shoppers.
I need to be sure of what I'm eating.
Exactly. That what you're feeding your children, your husband, eating yourself, isn't going to harm you or them. Which is the number one concern. The second concern, and it came above things like air pollution, climate change, and water shortage, was food waste. So there is an acknowledgement out there between shoppers and consumers is that food waste is a significant and real issue.
So there is a real awareness. They are conscious that there is an issue, and that's the beginning of the solution.
Absolutely. Now then, when you then ask how do you solve that, locality of production is not up there. What they're asking for is no packaging, which contradicts what we know about extending the shelf life of food.
So they want the food to come directly on their plate without being protected in any way?
It's a personal opinion, but I think shoppers and people think that packaging is merely for convenience. It keeps the peas together and it stops meat juices contaminating the other shopping. But what we need to do is educate shoppers and diners that the packaging there is to extend...
It's meant to help. It's meant to do something better.
Yeah, exactly. It extends the shelf life of food. For example, we offered shoppers an unwrapped and a wrapped cucumber. And 3/4 said, I'll have the unwrapped cucumber, please.
It looks safer because it's unwrapped.
Yeah, and packaging is nasty, it's bad for the environment, so on and so forth. But then we told them that the shelf life of the unwrapped cucumber was 1 to 3 days. The wrapped was 7 to 10 days. So we've got a 3-fold increase in shelf life, which is a 3-fold decrease in all environmental effects.
But that means you need some kind of pedagogical effort to let them know what the benefits of those packagings are.
Absolutely, and that's the challenge that I think we face as society. Another factor that the research threw out is it really didn't matter too much whether you approach the consumer with their environmental hat on, with their economic hat on, or their social hat on. All 3 messages resounded with them.
And household owner and payer hat on.
Yes, whichever hat seems to work, but it's getting that message to them is the real challenge.
And so now that you have this better understanding of your consumers and customers' expectation, what are you doing as Sealed Air to provide solutions to meet both those customers and consumers and the industry needs? Maybe Jonathan, you can give us a few examples on how you as a company are innovating to help the food industry and the food service industry manage those food access, food transport, food waste management issues.
Yes, certainly. The Sealed Air focuses on reducing the food waste through both the packaging and the hygiene and the chemicals. And what we do is we intervene at every step from the farm to the fork. So for instance, on the farm in a milking parlour, you'll be using chemicals to clean the pipes, transport the milk. In the processing plant, you'll be using our packaging to package the products. Then the packages are used at retail or in food service and even transported directly to the kitchen.
Like those ones?
Like those ones.
So this is a vacuum packaging,
exactly.
and this is actually non-cooked food.
Exactly. Now the technical benefits of the materials are that you can prolong the shelf life by using a high barrier film in combination with either a vacuum, which we've got in this case, or with MAP, which is a modified atmosphere package. We also have extremely high-tech films that can scavenge odor, scavenge oxygen, keeping products fresher, keeping the quality better for longer. And we also have the option in a product like this, for instance, to pasteurize the product in the pack and therefore get a longer shelf life. So you have a lot of benefits to extend shelf life and to reduce waste.
So indeed, these kinds of solutions, for instance, will allow a patron, a restaurant owner, or a final consumer to store that food for a longer time without it losing any kind of qualities, whether taste or texture. And hence it won't be rotten at the end of the week and I'm obliged to throw it away if I just forgotten it at the bottom of the refrigerator.
Exactly.
So saving money.
It saves money, it saves food, and also what one should note that it's very important to have the right level of packaging. We don't want too much packaging, but we don't want too little packaging either. So for instance, we talked about the carbon footprint of meat being much higher. A 3 kg primal cut of beef, for instance, would have a carbon footprint of 370 times higher than the packaging. So it's essential that we do not waste that meat and that you do not end up with throwing out the meat, which is not only an economic loss, but it's a very significant environmental loss as well.
So the better packaging we have, the less waste we have, if I would try to summarize that.
And we need to optimize it. So we don't want too much packaging, but we don't want too little either, because if you end up wasting the food, then that is an environmental impact.
So much for the cucumber without packaging. Then Ed, what does that mean from a sustainability perspective? When you get that kind of packaging that allows longer shelf life or longer storage in the restaurant and allows the chef not to buy too much and not to throw too much, what does that mean for the environment, for sustainability?
Well, that's interesting. For sustainability, remember that sustainability is not just environmentalism. Sustainability is environment, social, and economic. And if we look at these packs, for example, for me, for my own diet, they're a little bit small, but they are portion controlled.
That's your point of
my
view.
issue.
That's
That's
your
my
point of view.
personal issue. But they are portion controlled. So from a social aspect, they are nutritionally accurate, and that's true, I believe, in healthcare, where you can modify
This is the right food, right quantity for me.
Yeah, so in hospitals particularly, you can actually modify the food for a particular diet or health need. Secondly, because it's portion controlled, you're not getting the same physical waste. Although my portion size is probably 2 or 3 times bigger, it doesn't necessarily mean I eat it all.
Right.
So that's where you get the waste. And then additionally, you've got those issues. We get home tonight, you get a phone call from a friend, let's go out for dinner. Hey, I can have that tomorrow, rather than bought all of the individual ingredients and thrown them out. And then finally, all of the waste, all of the peelings, all of the bones, etc., that we may have at home, to us is waste. To a chef or a food processor, that's raw material for stocks and gravies.
They can use anything.
Absolutely.
They can use anything from the raw material.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's interesting to know, because I think we're going to talk to a chef in a few minutes. Just before him, Catherine, maybe you have other advices to share for our visitors here who are professionals in food service or hospitality. What kind of advice would you give them to reduce food waste?
I think there are 3 key areas that we really need to focus on. Working collaboratively together as an industry. So really, collaboration is number 1. How can we all come together and have the discussions to be able to move on the agenda to look at how we can help food access, how we can reduce food waste as a result, and also deliver food safely, which I think, as we heard from Ed, is concern number 1 from the consumers. And so it's working with other organizations, looking beyond the industry. So, for example, Sealed Air has partnered with WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, to be able to look at how we can work effectively in sourcing food, producing food safely, and then using packaging and hygiene solutions along the way to ensure that it can be delivered to the consumer with the best quality possible, with the least risk. Innovation, constantly working again, partnering to focus on innovation, new technologies, and working with organizations like Sealed Air to really help drive again that agenda forward, which can then in turn drive business growth and sustainability, as we've heard. And then education for me is really, I think, simply the key here. If you look again at France, there's a turnover of employees here in food service alone of 130% on an annual basis, which is huge. And so how can we actually educate these people effectively so that they understand the impact of working to deliver safe food to customers? How do they actually understand the impact of these types of technologies and innovation to help to reduce food waste? So again, I come back to the point I said before, awareness, education, really driving behavioral change in our people is ultimately going to change the way that we work and improve the culture, the food safety culture and the food waste culture that we work in.
So it's indeed very important to communicate as much as we can to all those food service operators today, whether patrons or employees and chefs. These are the people you need to show and be an example to. And indeed, that's what we're trying also to do today. So I'm actually asking then the real chef to come aboard and join us on this table, Jordan Vignal. Who is today demonstrating on the Diversity Care stand on the Village des Chefs how to live up to the challenge of managing food waste and combining that with sous vide cooking. Donc je vais revenir au français et ensuite traduire un petit peu. Jordan Vignal aujourd'hui, donc vous êtes chef de partie au refuge des gourmets en Haute-Savoie, c'est ça?
C'est ça, tout à fait.
Et donc vous avez participé, je crois, à Top Chef donc en 2014.
C'est ça.
C'était un gros challenge?
C'était un gros challenge, mais voilà, il faut toujours essayer de se dépasser, passer à de nouvelles aventures, et Top Chef en est une, donc voilà, il faut la vivre à fond.
Et là, donc, vous êtes en train de vivre une autre aventure, puisque Diverset est venu vous voir en cherchant des chefs qui pouvaient justement montrer l'exemple de la bonne pratique avec l'utilisation du sous-vide. Dimanche, came to you to be an example and show how what kind of best practices can be set up with the use of sous vide. Quelle a été votre réaction lorsque Dimanche vous a lancé ce défi, rien acheter, tout à savourer? What was your reaction when Dimanche came to you? Nothing to throw away, everything can be eaten.
Alors, ma réaction, c'est que j'ai tout de suite accepté parce que alors, le gaspillage, en ce moment, on est en plein dedans. On voit de plus en plus d'émissions à la télé qui essayent de nous sensibiliser à ce sujet. Voilà, et ça concerne toutes les personnes sur cette planète, que ce soit de la ménagère qui fait à manger pour ses enfants, aux professionnels. On est tous en train de gaspiller et à force, il faut vraiment que ça s'arrête. Donc, essayer d'inculquer toutes ces valeurs, de retransformer ces produits qu'on est prêt à jeter en d'autres produits qui sont consommables.
So you accepted immediately because food waste is a very important issue for you, and you consider it's important not just for you as a chef, but for everybody, whether the housewife or any kind of restaurant. And this is actually a worldwide issue. Donc, pour revenir aux techniques qu'on vous a proposé d'utiliser pour donc ce jeu de je ne jette rien, tout est bon. Qu'est-ce que l'emballage sous vide vous évoquait à l'époque ou vous évoque aujourd'hui, et dans quelle mesure ça a impacté votre métier au quotidien? Je vais traduire la question. What does sous vide packaging mean to you, or what did it mean at the time, and how can it impact your daily work?
Alors, le sous vide pour transformer les aliments, c'est une des meilleures techniques. Il a plusieurs avantages. Donc, c'est-à-dire que déjà, sur la conservation des produits, c'est un gain de temps énorme. Par exemple, pour vous donner un exemple, demain vous allez au supermarché, vous achetez une banane, au bout de 3 jours elle va commencer à noircir. Si vous l'achetez, vous la mettez directement sous vide, vous allez la garder une semaine et demie intacte, tout le temps la même couleur jaune ou verte, et les qualités vont rester les mêmes.
So indeed, sous vide is actually a very practical and very good technique to store and keep food in its best quality as possible. And a banana after 3 days will start to get black, whereas a banana under a vacuum packaging will keep its absolutely nice color for more than a week. Et donc, est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, le sous-vide, ça impacte votre travail de tous les jours? Comment vous vous en servez?
Aujourd'hui, oui, il a un véritable impact. De plus en plus de restaurants s'en servent justement pour ces conditions de conservation et de maintien des qualités, que ce soit organoleptiques ou gustatives. Mais après, il faut essayer d'enlever cette vision aux gens que le sous-vide n'est pas que industriel. Le fait, par exemple, de mettre une viande sous vide au restaurant, vous aurez une meilleure texture. Le fait de mettre des légumes, vous allez garder leur saveur pleine. Donc, voilà, il faut essayer d'enlever ces a priori de sous vide est égal à industriel, parce que c'est pas vrai du tout.
So indeed, vacuum packaging is something that is not only industrial. This is something that has a lot of qualities to store food, and this is something that any restaurant, any chef can use in his kitchen, to keep the quality and have a better texture to its meat, for example. On a parlé éducation tout à l'heure avec Catherine, qui expliquait que c'est finalement la formation qui est quand même clé dans cette histoire, pour que les jeunes chefs d'aujourd'hui, voire ceux qui sont déjà chefs aujourd'hui, sachent ce que c'est que cette typologie d'emballage sous vide et comment ça marche. Est-ce que le gaspillage alimentaire aujourd'hui fait partie des programmes de formation et comment il s'inscrit dans votre métier? How does sous vide and vacuum packaging is included into the training programs?
Oui, alors quand vous êtes au CFA par exemple, parce que moi j'ai fait les CFA, on nous apprend à ne pas gaspiller. Voilà, c'est une des premières valeurs qu'on nous inculque. Mais ensuite, par rapport au sous-vide, on ne nous le présente pas assez. Il faudrait qu'on ait vraiment des cours qui soient poussés là-dessus, parce que c'est sûrement l'avenir de la cuisine. Mais non, pour l'instant, c'est pas encore assez bien ancré dans les CFA. Les écoles hôtelières, j'en ai aucune idée, je connais pas. Mais voilà, je pense qu'il faudrait vraiment insister là-dessus.
And so you consider today, from your experience in the CFA school, that even though you were trained and made conscious about food waste, you were not so much trained into those new packaging techniques that could help you do a better job in food storing. Donc aujourd'hui, par rapport au fait de lutter contre le gaspillage, faire des économies d'approvisionnement en ne jetant pas ou en travaillant mieux ses achats. Qu'est-ce que ça exige aujourd'hui dans un restaurant et vous, qu'est-ce que vous attendriez de vos fournisseurs?
Déjà, le sous-vide, il faut savoir que c'est pas des techniques qui sont comme ça du jour au lendemain. Il y a des formations à suivre. On ne peut pas tout faire tous les jours. Il faut respecter certaines règles, comme par exemple ne jamais mettre un produit chaud dans un sous-vide,
Ouais.
parce que l'effet que vous
La
voulez
chaleur.
sur la conservation ne marchera pas. Donc il faut vraiment respecter les règles d'hygiène à la base. Ensuite, par rapport aux fournisseurs, peut-être avoir des formations courtes par rapport à eux, ce qu'ils présentent dans leur entreprise, nous montrer un peu comment ils travaillent, comment sont faits par exemple les papiers sous vide niveau
utilisent.
voilà, qualitativement. Voilà, mais ensuite, les plus grosses entreprises déjà le font, donc on est bien formé là-dessus. Et voilà, il faudrait juste que tout le monde se mette
Au diapason.
voilà, au diapason.
D'accord. Et donc en fait, pour que ça fonctionne, pour que ça marche en termes d'une meilleure gestion du gaspillage, il faudrait, comme vous le disiez, je vais le traduire en anglais juste après, d'une part apprendre la bonne technique et d'autre part que les fournisseurs vous aident à le faire. So the way to improve those performances and those best practices would be first to be aware that there are techniques to learn. It's just not something that you can do from scratch. And for instance, you do not bring a hot food, a hot product into a vacuum packaging, or else it's just going to ruin everything, which is like the basics. Basics is not safe. It's going to explode when you open it. So that's the kind of best practices you can learn at school. And most of all, the chefs, Jordan needs his suppliers to come and train him, to come and explain how those products work, how are they used, how should they be used for the maximum and optimum use and protection. Thank you very much for this participation. Tu as quelque chose à ajouter pour cette histoire de sous-vide? Ça aide la vie de tous les jours?
Ça aide dans la vie de tous les jours, oui, bien sûr. Donc voilà, essayez d'apprendre toutes les techniques qu'il y a par rapport à ça et
en faire le maximum.
Et en faire le maximum pour arrêter ce gaspillage.
Donc, one must, in every kitchen, learn about those benefits of the vacuum packaging and help us reduce food waste in our homes, in our restaurants, in our hotels, and everywhere. Well, thank you very much to all four of you for this very rich discussion. We have learned indeed a lot on food waste and food management. We have learned that you can better store, we can better transport food when you use the proper packaging. You ensure better hygiene, better quality, and thus you reduce waste. If you have any more questions, if you have access to the Village des Chefs, you may go to the Diversity Sirha stand in the Village des Chefs, or I guess look at the website. What would be the name of the website if they want more information, Catherine? Sirha.com. Et c'est donc la fin de cette présentation sur comment réduire le gaspillage avec de meilleures solutions de packaging et d'hygiène. Comme le dit le chef Jordan, quand c'est sous vide, c'est protégé, c'est d'une meilleure qualité, on peut le garder plus longtemps, servir une meilleure nourriture, des créations qui ont gardé toute leur qualité et faire des économies. Merci beaucoup Jordan. Thank you Catherine, thank you Ed, thank you Jonathan. Thanks to you.
Merci à Sirha, solution globale d'emballage et d'hygiène. Alice, j'ai une petite question pour vous. Est-ce que vous êtes allergique?
Je ne suis pas allergique, j'ai cette chance-là.
Alors, nous allons justement parler d'allergie et d'allergènes, puisque nous allons avoir une conférence intéressante avec l'un des seuls restaurants en France, voire au monde, à proposer une solution de restauration sans allergènes. On va vous expliquer tout ça. Il s'appelle Mon Histoire dans l'assiette. C'est un restaurant lyonnais. On en parle avec eux dans quelques minutes. Ils vont vous proposer une recette de dessert. Ce sera sur l'espace démonstration de Sirha TV. Ce sera à 16h25 et nous enchaînerons à 17h avec le dernier plateau de cet après-midi avec l'Association française des maîtres restaurateurs. Bon après-midi et à tout de suite.